Have you ever heard of a place where a human hand was worth less than a rubber vine? A place where baskets weren't filled with fruit, but with severed hands. It sounds like something out of a horror movie, but this was the horrifying reality in the Congo Free State at the turn of the 20th century. Today, we're going to uncover one of history's darkest and most brutal chapters. A story of greed, terror, and a punishment so infamous it became the symbol of an entire regime of exploitation: the amputation of hands. This story begins not with a nation, but with a single man's ambition: King Leopold II of Belgium. In the late 19th century, Leopold managed to convince the world that his interest in the vast Congo basin was purely humanitarian. He claimed he wanted to bring civilization, Christianity, and commerce to the region, to end the slave trade and uplift the local populations. He established a private colony, the Congo Free State, not as a Belgian territory, but as his own personal property, larger than Western Europe itself. But behind this philanthropic mask lay an insatiable greed for wealth. The catalyst for the horror that followed was the invention of the pneumatic tire and the subsequent global boom in demand for rubber. The Congo was rich with wild rubber vines, and Leopold saw his opportunity. He declared all vacant land, which was essentially the entire territory, as his own, and with it, all its resources. The Congolese people were no longer owners of their land. They were subjects forced into a brutal system of labor. To extract this rubber, Leopold established the Force Publique, a private army of local conscripts led by European officers. This was not a military force for national defense. It was an army of occupation designed to enforce Leopold's will. Their primary mission was to terrorize the local population into meeting impossibly high quotas for rubber collection. Villages that failed to deliver their quota faced horrific consequences. Their homes were burned, their women were taken hostage, and entire communities were massacred. And this is where the policy of hand amputation became a core instrument of control. The European officers of the Force Publique were concerned about their soldiers wasting expensive ammunition. Cartridges were precious, and they needed to be accounted for. So, a ghastly rule was put in place. For every bullet fired, a soldier had to produce the right hand of the person they had killed. This was meant to be proof that the bullet hadn't been wasted on hunting animals or used in a mutiny. It was a cold, cruel, bureaucratic calculation that led to unimaginable suffering. The system was monstrously flawed from the start. What happened if a soldier missed a shot? What if they used a bullet to hunt for food, something they were often forced to do due to poor supplies? To cover their tracks and meet the gruesome requirement, soldiers began to do the unthinkable. Instead of bringing back the hands of people they had killed in a skirmish, they would simply cut off the hands of the living. Men, women, and even small children became victims. Imagine the terror. A patrol from the Force Publique arrives in your village. They haven't come to protect you. They've come to demand rubber. If the quota isn't met, they don't just punish the men. They seize anyone they can find. A child playing near their home, a woman returning from the fields, their lives are shattered in an instant, their hands severed, not for any crime they committed, but to balance a ledger of bullets. These severed hands were often smoked to preserve them on the journey back to the command posts, where they were presented to the European officers. Eyewitness accounts describe soldiers returning from expeditions with baskets filled with these grim trophies. It was a system that dehumanized everyone involved. The Congolese victims were reduced to mere objects, their body parts used as currency. And the soldiers of the Force Publique, many of whom were conscripted from one Congolese tribe to terrorize another, were trapped in a cycle of brutality. They were brutalized themselves and forced to inflict even greater brutality on others. This practice wasn't a secret, isolated incident. It was a widespread, systematic policy of terror. Entire villages lived in constant fear. The sight of a severed hand became the ultimate symbol of the regime's power and cruelty. It was a message: resist, and this is what will happen to you and your family. Cooperate, and you might survive, but you will do so as a slave on your own land. The psychological impact was devastating. Survivors were left permanently maimed, unable to work or care for themselves. They served as a living, walking warning to others. One of the most famous and haunting photographs from this era, taken by the missionary Alice Seeley Harris, shows a Congolese man named Ansala staring at the severed hand and foot of his 5-year-old daughter. She had been killed and dismembered as a punishment because his village had failed to meet its rubber quota. This single image helped expose the horrors to the world and became a powerful symbol for the human rights campaign against Leopold. The world began to learn about these atrocities thanks to the courageous efforts of a few individuals. Missionaries like Alice Seeley Harris and her husband John, who documented the abuses with their cameras. Journalists like Edmund Dean Morrell, a British shipping clerk who noticed that ships arriving from the Congo were filled with valuable rubber and ivory, but the ships returning carried only soldiers and guns. He realized this wasn't free trade, it was a slave state. He launched one of the first great international human rights campaigns of the 20th century. Writers like Mark Twain and Arthur Conan Doyle lent their famous voices to the cause, penning powerful condemnations of Leopold's regime. Their collective efforts created a massive public outcry across Europe and America. Under immense international pressure, Leopold II was finally forced to relinquish his personal control over the Congo in 1908. The territory was annexed by the Belgian state and became the Belgian Congo. While this marked the end of the Congo Free State and Leopold's direct rule, the legacy of exploitation and violence continued for decades, and the scars of this period run deep even today. The exact death toll from Leopold's regime is impossible to know for sure. But historians estimate that the population of the Congo was reduced by as much as 50%, with millions perishing from murder, starvation, exhaustion, and disease. The amputation of hands stands as the most visceral and enduring symbol of this genocide. It represents the ultimate expression of colonial greed, where human life was valued less than a commodity, and where a man's limb was nothing more than a receipt for a bullet. This story is a difficult one to hear, but it is crucial that we remember it. It serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty and the catastrophic consequences of unchecked power and greed. It also shows us the power of brave individuals who dare to speak out against injustice. The legacy of Leopold's Congo is a warning from history, reminding us to remain vigilant against exploitation and to always champion human dignity. Thank you for joining me in uncovering this important and often overlooked part of our world's history. If you found this video informative, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the past. Your support helps us continue to tell these vital stories. We'll see you in the next one.